Okay. Hello, everyone. I wish you a good day, a good afternoon, and a good evening. Welcome to the spUN Virtual High School Debate Tournament 2025 for June 1st. Judge Shreya Srivatsan is a University of Michigan student and has judged the spUN debates for the last 3 years. Shreya is driven by passion for political science and public policy. Her goal is to pioneer the next generation of space law by paving the way for legal accountability in ever expanding the space industry. She resides in Michigan, USA. And will be giving us feedback and announcing the winner at the end of the debate. Judge, please be sure to record your information in taproot.com as soon as possible after the debate, so that the teams get the advice of their next debate status. I'm the moderator and facilitator for this 2025 tournament spUN room, and my name is Isabella, and Tamara is assistant. I would like you to read the following statement to you. The winning team is chosen based on their skill and effort, not by any preset NSS position. NSS clearly believes that humanity should continue to explore, develop, and settle space. However, NSS also believes that open, honest debate will facilitate that goal. It's important that space advocates understand and be able to express the anti-space case. Not statement given by any debater or coach is an official NSS position. Let's meet our debaters. The affirmative position is held by Team Manganese. Manganese is a valuable resource that could be extracted from asteroids and used in various applications, both in space and on Earth. Manganese could be mined from asteroids a variety of purpose, such as rocket fuel, construction material, and even for selling on Earth. The team is coached by Shauna Christensen, as is a Space Foundation teacher liaison involved with American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, and an officer of the Palm Beach Middle School Forensic League, the co-founder of Aerospace and Innovation Academy, and is a nationally recognized Diamond Debate teacher. She has been with the spUN Debate program for 7 years. She resides in Florida, USA. Team Manganese, please give us your name and the country you're representing.
Hello, my name is Mahesh Teja, and I'm representing the country India.
My name is Alex Matei, and I'm representing Canada.
My name is Ms. Miruna Pop, and I'm representing Romania.
My name is Adit Mishra, and I'm representing the US.
Next, oh, sorry. Continue.
My name is Bogdan and I'm representing Romania.
Okay. Next, we'll hear from Team Iron. The asteroid 16 Psyche is believed to contain 1.7 times 10 to the 19th power kilograms of nickel iron, which could supply the world's production requirement for several million years. A small portion of the extracted material would also be precious metals. The team is coached by Coach Eric Otto. He's a social studies teacher at Niles West High School in Skokie, Illinois. He has coached debate for schools within the district for the last 14 years. He holds 3 master's degrees, a Juris Doctor, and a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy and Political Science. He loves to travel the world and meet people from different cultures. This is his 2nd year preparing students for the spUN debates. Team Iron, please give us your name and the country you're representing.
My name is Dinesh, and I'm representing the United Kingdom.
My name is Raghav, and I'm representing Canada.
And my name is David, and I'm representing the Romania.
Okay. If anyone has a question, please raise your hand in your participants icon on your screen. Mute your mic unless you're speaking, and only the presenting team and judge should have on their videos, unless directed by the moderator. Let's get started. The 2025 spUN High School resolution is: an international body should establish a framework for the utilization of space minerals. We'll hear first from the first speaker from Team Manganese, representing the affirmative position. Team Manganese, your first speaker may begin your affirmative intro. You have 4 minutes.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening, esteemed judges and worthy opponents. We are Team Manganese, and today we are arguing on the pro side of the resolution. Judge, please give us a signal when ready.
I'm ready.
Space offers vast resources for industry and innovation, but poses immense challenges. Without regulation, powerful entities could dominate space minerals, limiting fair access. Team Manganese supports an international framework for utilizing space minerals. For the clarification of the judges, we offer the following definitions. International body, a coalition of nations under mutual agreements, framework, guideline, and oversight mechanisms to govern the extraction, processing, and application of space minerals. Utilization, extracting, processing, and applying space minerals. Space minerals, naturally occurring solids in space, including platinum, iron, nickel, titanium, and ice. The core value in this debate is universalization, ensuring space resources benefits all nations. Team Manganese proposes that the Artemis Accords and the International Lunar Research Station representatives lead in multilateral talks on space mineral use, promoting fairness, stability, and global prosperity. The Artemis Accords, spearheaded by NASA and signed by over 40 nations, promote collaboration, transparency, and ethical space exploration, fostering inclusive frameworks for lunar and beyond activities. Meanwhile, the ILRS, a China Russia led initiative for a lunar research base, will serve as a critical hub for scientific coordination, resource oversight, and international cooperation. Our first contention is that a regulatory framework ensures economic fairness. Lunar water ice and rare minerals promise to revolutionize energy, manufacturing, and infrastructure. For instance, NASA estimates that a single platinum rich asteroid could be worth over 30 billion US dollars. And Morgan Stanley projects that the global space economy to reach over $1 trillion by 2040, with space mining playing a very key role. With such a huge potential economy, we do not want to risk these valuable resources just to be monopolized by the few powerful. A robust international framework would guarantee equitable access, just as the International Seabed Authority did for deep sea mining. By defining clear property rights and usage protocols, it ignites investment, fuels innovation, and generates jobs, just like the Outer Space Treaty did for early space cooperation. Now, moving on to our second contention. Collaboration robustly reduces operational cost. History proves this. NASA's Viking program, launched in the 1970s, was a massive solar endeavor that ballooned to nearly 1 billion US dollars in costs. In stark contrast, the Venus Express mission, driven by the European Space Agency with contributions from multiple European nations, Russia's Roscosmos, and they leveraged pre-existing designs from the Mars Express and the Soyuz launch systems. This collaboration achieved success just for 220 million US dollars, almost as 5 times as cheaper. This contrast shows that collaboration isn't just moral, it's economical. A global framework enables resource pooling, technical coordination, and cost sharing. In doing so, it ensures fair access, fosters shared prosperity, and prevents a handful of nations from dominating space's scientific, economic, and resource potential. This is why we urge you to vote in the pro, for a future grounded in universal benefit. Thank you.
Okay, now we begin a 3-minute prep time for the negative team to prepare their cross-examination. If the negative team is ready to move on before the 3 minutes has elapsed, please indicate it to me and we'll proceed. Okay, first speaker from Team Iron, please begin your 2-minute cross-examination.
Yeah, sure. Hello. My first question is gonna be, if other accords already exist, what is the requirement for an international framework considering you already named such accords?
You have mentioned the Artemis Accord. Could you please repeat the question? I'm sorry.
If other accords already exist, what is the requirement for an international framework?
The other accords do not provide clear clarity. It do not define who it do not define clear loss. It does not set clear clarity for investors to approach the sector. So the framework is the best way to ensure clarity so that this sector can thrive.
Yeah, excuse me, but in your speech you told us that those ensure actual clarity on those specific times. My next question is, how do you justify the allocation of resources across member nations?
Space resources will be equally distributed. Uh, if that answered your question.
No, how do you do it actually? How do you justify it?
Every just as how resources will be shared on Earth, we shall share resources in space with a similar system in the framework.
Okay. Can you demonstrate that resource distribution is truly equitable? Because in the case of Earth, it's not. And that's why I'm asking you this question.
That's because space mining hasn't even begun yet. Once it starts, uh, the framework will ensure that each country gets its resources in a fair and equitable manner.
Yeah, you didn't give me any framework and you didn't extend my question. I asked you how you do it, and you didn't tell me how you do it.
Please, I'm gonna ask you to stop. And now, first speaker of Iron, please give us your 4-minute opening speech.
Yes. Honorable Chair, respected judges, and esteemed affirmative team. Today, the opposition stands in strong disagreement with the motion. An international body should establish a framework for the utilization of space materials. Our team believes that this motion, while well-intentioned, proposes a solution that is unrealistic, premature, and ultimately harmful to innovation and international equity. Before diving into our arguments, let me outline how our side will present our case in this debate. As the first negative speaker, I will establish why the idea of a universal framework is flawed in both theory and practice. I will also challenge the assumptions made by the affirmative team about the nature of space governance. The second negative speaker will expand on these ideas by highlighting how such a framework could stifle innovation, hinder developing nations, and lead to regulatory monopolies. Our third speaker will focus entirely on rebutting the affirmative claims, exposing their logical gaps and inconsistencies. Finally, our fourth speaker will summarize the debate and explain why the opposition provides the most responsible and realistic vision for humanity's future in space. The idea of a universal framework is unrealistic in today's geopolitical climate. The affirmative team speaks of universal cooperation as though it's just a matter of willpower, but in the real world, geopolitics don't work that way. The US, China, and Russia are already competing for influence in space, and their national interests are fundamentally opposed. The Artemis Accords, for example, include over 30 nations, but exclude China. China and Russia have their own plans for a joint lunar base. Expecting these rival powers to sit at the same table and create a fair, enforceable framework is politically naive. Space is not a blank slate. It's already shaped by alliances, rivalries, and strategic goals. Attempting to impose a single legal structure on such a fractured landscape will lead not to unity, but to paralysis. There is no precedent for a supranational body governing extraction. Let's look at Earth. Despite the decades of diplomacy, we still don't have a functioning enforceable framework for seabed mining. The International Seabed Authority exists, but many countries operate outside it, and enforcement is weak. If we can't govern oceans and environmental we've known for centuries, why would we succeed in governing the cosmos, where the stakes are uncertainties and are even higher? The United Nations in 1979 Moon Agreement tried to declare space as the common heritage of mankind. Almost no major spacefaring nation signed it. Why? Because countries don't want to give up sovereignty or submit to a centralized regulator. The same fate would befall any new framework. It would be ignored by the powerful, leaving the weak by rules they didn't create. Premature regulations risk universalizing inequality. Here's how the irony. Here's the irony. The affirmative team argues for the universal fairness, but a rigid early framework will do the opposite. It will entrench current space powers by letting them write the rules by knocking out emerging nations. Universalization done wrong becomes exclusion. The truth is that many nations haven't launched a satellite. How can they participate equally in a framework about space mining? Instead of helping, the framework would reinforce a global hierarchy. Real equity comes not from immediate centralization, but from allowing developing nations to build their own space capabilities first, then contributing to governance structures when they are ready. Honorable judges, all we want is peace. We all want that, sustainability and fairness in space. But this motion proposes a solution that skips essential steps. Ignorance ignores geopolitical realities and risks freezing progress. The opposition believes in a better path, flexible cooperation, national responsibility, and organic legal development, not rigid global overreach. We urge you to vote for the negative team. Thank you.
Okay, now please, the first speaker from Manganese, start your cross-examination to the first speaker of Iron. You have 2 minutes.
You have uh, you have mentioned that the International Seabed Authority did not succeed in its realm, but didn't even if companies would start mining, would start shore mining, doesn't don't you agree that it defines clear rights so that they don't exploit the resources? This is what we intend to do in space too. How would you justify that?
Could you repeat the questions about the International Space Seabed Authority? I didn't get the first half.
You said that the International Seabed Authority did not succeed in its run, but by giving rules and rights, didn't it actually create a clarity so that the upcoming shore mining generations uh, have a clear rules and they do not exploit it? We intend to do that in space too. How can you
Well,
justify yourself for that?
Well, just as I said, the International Cyber Authority defines clear rules, but even though they are there, they are not enforced. They are not respected by many countries, and a lot of nations operate outside of it, meaning that even their simple existence without enforcement is useless.
Okay. So if there's a dispute between two countries over an asteroid, who resolves it in your system?
Well, it would be resolved by those two nations, like we do it today with all kinds of diplomatic activities. When Russia
Okay, so
and
wouldn't that spark? I'm sorry. Please, I would like to continue with the next question. But wouldn't that spark a war? That wasn't that just spark a war between multiple nations?
Well, no, it will not spark a war. There are many examples of countries cooperating and debating without having actual conflicts.
Please, I'm gonna ask you to stop. Now, the second speaker from Manganese offers their second argument for the affirmative team. They have 4 minutes.
Speakers ready, judges ready?
Yes.
As my colleague just mentioned, the economic potential for space resources is huge, from rare earth metals such as platinum to even helium-3. These materials could help revolutionize industries on Earth and in space. But we need to be clear. Unregulated mining in space is not just an ethical issue, but a serious threat. Without a clear framework, profit-driven companies would destroy priceless scientific data, damage Earth's space economy, and turn our greatest frontier into a lawless wasteland. Take the moon's Shackleton crater as an example. This crater holds ice deposits that are older than the Earth's oceans, making it a time capsule for our solar system's history. NASA has identified it as one of 24 heritage sites that must be preserved for future research. However, the International Lunar Research Station plans to build a base there by 2035, and private companies are racing to mine these very sites. Lunar dust is more than just an annoyance. A 2022 study confirmed that mining near these craters could send dust plumes into the air, burying the ice forever. If that happens, we lose key information about the origins of Earth's water and vital resources for future space missions. This is why the Artemis Accords matter. Article 11 requires countries to protect important space sites. If we bring the Artemis nations and the ILRS under a shared system, we can set no mining zones and require dust control technology. Imagine Artemis's lunar gateway satellite monitoring mining activity in real time, while ILRS rovers work together with scientists in protected areas. Cooperation, not competition, ensures that all nations have access to these resources, not just the richest or most powerful ones. But the danger is not just on the moon. Earth's orbit is already filled with space junk. Over 36,500 debris objects are flying around our planet at 28,000 kilometers per hour. In 2022, a Russian anti-satellite test created 1,500 new fragments, forcing astronauts to take shelter. Now imagine thousands of mining ships, fuel stations, and asteroid tugs added to this chaos. The European Space Agency warns that one big crash could start a chain reaction, making entire orbits unusable. Establishing a framework would help to mitigate this issue. Some say that international cooperation would slow down innovation, but that's simply not true. The ILRS's 2035 lunar base will need water and radiation shielding, just like Artemis missions. By sharing information and resources, we lower costs and avoid sending unnecessary missions. If Artemis shares its radiation shield designs with ILRS, both bases can benefit. But if a company ignores the mining bans near Shackleton Crater, the coalition can block the access to the lunar orbits. This is not about control; it's about responsibility. We're at a turning point. One path leads to reckless mining, short-term profits for few, and the permanent damage to space exploration. The other path creates a more universalized approach to the utilization of minerals. The $3 trillion space economy depends on sustainability. Vote pro, not just for rules, but for the survival of space itself. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll hear from the second speaker of Team Iron in a 2-minute cross-examination.
Okay. I'd like to start my first question with, are all major spacefaring nations signed on to the Artemis Accord?
Well, they will be, if that's your
Uh,
question.
then how do you justify that? There is no viable proof that they will be. They could just ignore it or refuse not to sign it.
Well, they won't refuse to not join because even like bigger countries, they need help. They can't work alone in space anymore. Um, so these space missions being expensive and risky, countries like the US and China, they would want to join because of the shared technology and for getting a better image to other countries.
That still doesn't answer my main question. How do you ensure that countries will join? If countries have enough money, like spacefaring nations, like you said, US, Russia, China, what's the guarantee that they can just do it themselves and they have to sign it?
Well, that's the thing, they don't have enough money anymore. It's space exploration cannot be done by a single country anymore. It'll be done in as in a framework.
Okay, so my next question will be that in during your speech, you mentioned about a shared framework allowing us to protect resources and create no mining zones. Who decides which areas are off limits, and how do we ensure that it's fair to smaller developing nations?
Well, the 24 heritage sites are already protected. And if a country would like to protect another area in space, there could be a vote about that.
So if multiple powerful countries could vote against or vote for to protect one area, countries could essentially gatekeep access under the label of protection, right?
No, because if one country wants to protect an area and different countries don't want to,
Please
the vote would.
stop. So now let's hear from the second speaker of the negative team. For your second argument, you are allotted 4 minutes.
Honorable Chair, esteemed judges, and respected affirmative team, I rise today as a second speaker for the opposition team to continue our stance against the motion that an international body should establish a framework for the utilization of space minerals. The affirmative team has painted a picture of unity and peace, but their proposed solution is one of unrealistic ambition, legal overreach, and dangerous centralization. We, on the negative side, believe the path forward is not premature international regulation, but organic cooperation, national innovation, and the responsible evolution of space governance. That is how we achieve true universalization, not through top-down control, but through inclusive and adaptive processes. My first point would be a universal framework is premature and impractical. There's currently no conscious on what a fair international framework would look like. Spacefaring nations like the US, China, and Russia all have conflicting goals benefiting their own country. The first affirmative speaker talked about the ILRS, including Russia and China, yet the Artemis Accord includes over 30 nations, but countries like China are excluded. In practice, we are seeing fragmentation, not the unity that the affirmative team is arguing for. The affirmative team also failed to explain and highlight a practical framework and explain it and describe one during their first affirmative speaker speech. Trying to force a universal framework now, before extraction technologies even exist at scale, is like drafting traffic laws for roads that haven't been built. This not only wastes resources, but also risks creating a system that reflects the interests of the powerful rather than including emerging space actors. True universalization means allowing governance to grow with participation, not ahead of it. Premature framework locks out voices before they're even ready to be heard. My second point would be overregulation will stifle innovation and privatize progress. The affirmative argues that rules boost investments, but history shows the opposite. Breakthroughs in aviation, the internet, and space launch technology have thrived under light-touched regulation. Companies like SpaceX didn't wait for the UN. They built rockets and redefined what's possible. International frameworks takes years to negotiate, while technology evolves in months. The asteroid mining company, Planetary Resources, failed not because of too little regulation, but because of market readiness. Burdening the next wave of companies with slow global bureaucracy will suffocate opportunity. Universalization thrives when innovation is nurtured, not strangled. Let space progress organically. Then we can regulate based on real needs. My third point will be national and regional models offer more effective governance. We don't oppose governance, we oppose bad governance. The US Commercial Space Launch Competitiveness Act of 2015 permits resource extraction without violating the Outer Space Treaty. It's a scalable model that respects national sovereignty while aligning with international norms. Meanwhile, bilateral agreements like the Artemis Accord show that countries can cooperate without a monolithic global body. These decentralized models allow for experimentation, adaptability, and inclusion as more nations gain capacity. Universalization doesn't mean one size fits all. It means building a mosaic of contributions, not enforcing a single vision. By calling for a central authority, the affirmative risks entrenching power in the hands of those already dominating space. Who will control this body? Who sets the rules? There's a real danger that wealthy countries will shape the framework in their image. So, honorable judges, the affirmative framework is not universal. It's premature, restrictive, and unrealistic. We support a flexible, evolving system that respects national innovation, fosters real cooperation. So we urge you to vote for negative side.
Okay, please, Team Manganese, start your 2-minute cross-examination to the second speaker of Iron. You have 2 minutes for that.
You said our group stands for unity, peace, and ambition. Are you saying you're against that?
Can you repeat that question again?
You said that our group stands for unity, peace, and ambition. Do you stand against that?
We don't stand against unity, peace, and what the third point you mentioned. We stand against the improper way of actually establishing it. By using a framework, all you do is give big countries or countries that have enough money and power to sit at the main table, the table where all comes from, and give them the power to make decisions based on what they want and not the low income countries or LICs, the way or the requirements for it.
Okay, you also said that that you stand against bad governance. Who's to say our framework would have bad governance?
The lack of enforcement and the explanation of the lack of enforcement already insinuates that if you can't enforce rules, what's the requirement for it? And to build on my previous point, why would you even include like say air laws when flights and aeroplanes aren't even a thing? That just
Oh,
uses a
okay,
lot of
I
materials.
understand. Thank you, thank you. If we don't use a framework, how do you plan to stop space from becoming a free-for-all?
Well, I'd like to answer that question by asking you a question. How would you enforce these laws in space?
I believe I'm the one asking the questions. Don't you think some regulation is better than no regulation at all?
Certain regulations would be better, but then you could also talk about who are enforcing this regulation. It all comes down to the point of who regulates them and who enforces them. If you can't enforce something, then there's no reason to have it in the first place.
Okay, and you mentioned that frameworks don't work, but what's your alternative to global cooperation in space?
What countries are doing now?
Okay, now we begin a 2-minute prep time for both teams to prepare their rebuttals, starting now. Okay, time is up. Please, the third speaker from Team Iron, please give us your rebuttal in your 4 minutes of time.
Honorable Chair, esteemed judges, the affirmative paints a vision of stability through international collaboration, but let's look beneath the surface. First, they mention multilateral talks, but space policy is already filled with international dialogues from Artemis Accords to bilateral partnerships. We don't need a centralized international body to talk. We need efficiency, not bureaucracy. Second, they highlight a lunar base and Venus Express as examples of collaboration. That's exactly the point. Countries already collaborate voluntarily when incentives align. The Venus Express worked because it was bottom-up, mission-specific, not because it forced under a single international regime. Now, on the economy, they cite a $1 trillion mining industry. Yes, space minerals have potential, but creating a global framework too early could strangle that potential. Look at the history of overregulation. Innovation slows, costs rise, and small private actors get locked out. Their arguments about preventing monopolization ironically assumes that big powers will follow international rules. Let's be real. Countries like the US, China, and Russia have already taken unilateral steps. The US commercial space launch Competitiveness Act allows American companies to claim asteroid resources. Why would they reverse the course now? Finally, the Outer Space Treaty already prohibits national appropriation. So we ask, what's missing? The answer isn't another slow-moving body. It's agile, adaptive governance driven by science and innovation, not politics. In short, the framework they propose risks doing more harm than good, stalling development, increasing red tape, and assuming compliance where none is guaranteed. Continuing from my previous point, let's examine what the second speaker said and their claims. They argue that economic potential of space is too large to go unregulated. But here's the catch. Who decides how it's regulated? A rushed top-down international framework could lock out developing countries and startups, entrenching power in hands of a few who dominate the negotiation table. Just like we've seen with the World Trade Organization, where global South nations often get sidelined. Next, they warn about unregulated mining and damage to heritage sites like moon ice deposits. But again, let's look at precedent. UNESCO already protects heritage on Earth, yet enforcement is so weak, sites still get bombed in wars or bulldozed for development. If we can't enforce heritage protection on Earth, how are we meant to do it on Moon, 384,000 kilometers away? They claim that lunar dust poses threats, that space debris will increase. These are not real problems. Let's be honest, they're engineering challenges, not governance ones. We don't stop using the internet because of cybersecurity. We build smarter systems. Let's fund better spacecraft shielding and dust management, not build more bureaucracy. And the fear of thousands of mining ships causing a chain reaction, that's speculative. We are decades away from that level of traffic. Right now, a single regulatory body would be trying to control a problem that doesn't yet exist at the cost of delaying meaningful research and exploration today. Finally, they say that frameworks don't slow innovation. That's optimistic, but not supported by history. The Moon Agreement stalled space diplomacy. ITU orbital slot allocation created massive delays for satellite launches. And let's not forget how overregulation in nuclear energy led to stagnation in that field. We are at a turning point, but the answer isn't to tie ourselves with premature, overly centralized framework. It's to encourage agile collaboration, mission by mission, where science leads, not politics. Thank you.
Now we'll hear from the third speaker of Manganese that will give the rebuttal in 4-minute time. Third speaker from Manganese.
So, I'm here. So, opponents ready? Judges ready?
Yes.
Thank you. We came here today to make a decision that will radically change the course of action in the entire world. But would it change for the better or for the worse? Will we have to endure a disastrous, chaotic reality that will slowly tear us apart? Well, this depends on what path we choose to follow. And I believe that Team Manganese just showed you all here today that the safest, economically friendliest, and fairest path is the one we support. That an international body should establish a framework for the utilization of space minerals. Today, I stand here in front of you to demonstrate you for one last time to demonstrate you that our team won today's debate. I will first battle my opponent's team arguments, and if there's any time left, I will get again through my team's calls. So, firstly, I couldn't help but notice that our opponent team didn't come with an alternative to our frameworks. They said that they are idealistic, that they hold the world in paralysis, in global paralysis, but they didn't come with another alternative. So what should we do? Should we let this world be like it is today, with all that chaos and the competition that actually tears nations apart and leaves enormous and several sites inaccessible? Also, they mentioned that powerful countries would already compete for power, so that and frameworks are not enforceable. But let's be serious. If we don't do anything, then it would be impossible to stop those countries from doing this. And plus, we are going to enforce those frameworks because we with licensing, with arbitration, shared tech, anti-monopolized registration, protected zones, dust rules, and orbital debris enforcement so that other countries can't break those rules or corrupt them. Moreover, and I said that before, they said that frameworks are idealistic and they bring the world into global paralysis, but that's not true. We've just showed you that these frameworks are going to bring innovation and a better communication between countries. Also, they said that lunar dust and space debris are not significant problems. Well, if not so, then what else it would be? Because if lunar dust comes into contact with those mining sites, then it would make them inaccessible. So basically, ice and so lunar water would become accessible. So how can we get to that research that we wanted to have if also space debris, if it continues to multiply itself into space just because some private companies have their own missions? Well, that will lead to an enormous amount of galaxies becoming inaccessible exactly because this space debris creates a chain reaction that destroys our access to important and valuable research. So please vote the con. Thank you.
Okay, now we begin a 2-minute prep time for both teams to prepare their summaries. Starting now. Now we'll hear from the last speaker from Team Iron in their 4-minute summary.
Okay, so I will start in 3, 2, 1. Honorable Chair, esteemed judges, and respected opponents, today's debate has made one thing clear. The question before us is not whether we want fairness and peace in space. Of course we do. The real question is how we achieve that fairness and whether a centralized international framework is the right path to get there. The affirmative team claims it is, but across this debate we've shown why such a framework is not only unrealistic, it is also unwise, exclusionary, and harmful to progress. Let me summarize why the opposition has convincingly won this debate. First, the affirmative assumes a level of global cooperation that simply does not exist. Our first speaker highlighted the fundamental geopolitical tensions shaping space policy today. The US, China, and Russia are not working toward a shared framework. They are working in direct competition. The Artemis Accords may include 30 countries, but they exclude major powers like China and Russia. These players are not going to surrender national interests to a central body anytime soon. We cannot legislate unity into existence. The world does not operate in idealistic harmony, and expecting it to do so in the high-stakes arena of space mining, it's not policy, it's wishful thinking. Second, the affirmative ignores the complete failure of of similar frameworks on Earth. We brought forward strong empirical comparisons. The International Seabed Authority, meant to regulate Earth's oceans, has been largely ineffective. Countries ignored it. Enforcement is weak and disputes persist. And the 1979 Moon Agreement, it was meant to do exactly what the affirmative wants, declare space the common heritage of mankind. Nearly every major spacefaring nation refused to sign it. Why? Because when powerful countries are asked to surrender sovereignty or profit to a centralized regulator, they simply walk away. A new framework for space would meet the same fate, ignored by the strong, binding only for the weak. A centralized framework would freeze out developing nations. The affirmative claims to support universal fairness, but if we pass a global framework today, it will be written by those already in power, the US, EU, and handful of private corporations. The rest of the world nations that haven't even launched satellites would be forced to follow rules they had no hand in creating. That is not inclusion, that is institutionalized inequality. Instead, we advocate a more just path. Let developing nations build capacity first, then allow them to shape governance when they are ready, not when others tell them to do so. So, my fourth point, innovation thrives in adaptive systems, not centralized bureaucracies. Our second speaker emphasized that space innovation has flourished under flexible national systems, not rigid global regulations. SpaceX didn't ask the UN's permission. It succeeded because the US allowed it to experiment, adapt, and take risks. A global framework would be slow, bureaucratic, and inflexible. Space mining is still a developing field. Locking it into a legal structure today would kill creativity before it even begins. Do we want a future of dynamic progress or one of premature paralysis? Our alternative rejects a rigid global framework in favor of flexible, national, and bilateral agreements that can adapt to changing technologies and interests. This approach encourages innovation and inclusive participation without imposing one-size-fits-all rules prematurely. So the affirmative vision of universalization is deeply flawed. They use the word universal as if it means fairness, but if that universality is dictated by the already powerful, it becomes a tool of homogenization, not justice. So the affirmative plan risks inequality and stifled innovation. We support a future where all nations grow into space governance, not get left behind. So vote against the motion. Thank you.
Okay, finally, we'll hear from the last speaker from Team Manganese, who will give their summary in a 4-minute allotment.
Judges ready? Opponents ready?
Yes.
We came here today to make a decision that would radically change the course of action in the world. But would it change for the better or for the worse? Our proposal aims for a sustainable, achievable, and successful future in space. As Speaker 4, I stand in front of you to demonstrate to you for one last time that our team has won today's debate. First, let us revisit our opponent's team line and claims. Our opponent team has stated that the idea of universal framework is flawed. Space powers will create monopolies, and they ignore geopolitical realities. An international framework will not have worked. But a universal framework isn't a flaw. It is a proven solution. It's a proven solution. Just like the Montreal Protocol, which United Nations chose to protect the ozone layer and shows how cooperation can solve global challenges. Moreover, in problems such as the Artemis ILRS cooperation, allies like Russia and India would encourage peace talks between the Artemis and ILRS. They also mentioned how overregulation would stifle innovation. However, they failed to ensure and understand the examples of Venus Express and its success. They failed to prove how the private companies would not exploit minerals. A fast-paced approach has failed to ensure peace and solve problems. An example we see is the space junk in the Earth's orbit right now. Moreover, without a framework, resources will not be shared properly. We have seen, we have also seen many actions such as the protected zones, dust regulations, joint surveillance, and incident protocols enforce frameworks. They have failed to clearly state why their solution offers a better collaboration than our Artemis ILRS cooperation. Moreover, I will summarize the major contentions from my team. Firstly, economic benefits. Space mining presents a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, but without regulation, it risks becoming a race dominated by the wealthiest nations and corporations. Our framework levels the playing field. It ensures equal profit sharing, encourages international joint ventures, and facilitates the exchange of research and technology. Just as the James Webb Space Telescope's mission succeeded through cooperation at a fraction of the cost compared to the solo mission of Hubble Space Telescope. Hence, a shared approach to space mining will maximize efficiency and minimize inequality. Secondly, ethical mining and safety. We must not repeat Earth's mistake in space. Ethical, sustainable mining is essential to protect critical scientific sites and human lives. Unregulated mining risks destroying these irreplaceable resources. Dust pollution and radiation exposure can also endanger astronauts and equipment. A regulatory body would set protected zones, safety standards, and dust control measures to preserve both of these. Last of all, universalization is the guiding principle behind our stance. It reflects humanity's collective responsibility to ensure that space is not exploited by the few, but developed by and for all. An international body promotes unity, cooperation, and shared progress. By working together under one trusted framework, we secure the survival and advancement of our species, not as individual nations, but as one global community. History has shown us that unregulated resource extraction leads to conflict, inequality, and environmental destruction. A global framework for space mining will ensure fair access, prevent corporate monopolization, and promote sustainability. I leave you with the words of John F. Kennedy. We choose to go to the moon not because it is easy, but because it is hard. Building a framework is hard, but
Okay, I'm
necessary.
gonna ask you to stop, please. Your time is up. Well, congratulations and thank you, everyone. Judge, would you like a couple minutes before you offer your feedback and the winning team?
Yeah, this was a really good debate. I'm gonna go ahead and take like 2 or 3 minutes to do the comments and everything.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just gonna make sure I did this right, and then let's see. Okay, so I have my comments and everything ready. So in this round I ended up voting neg. So congratulations on winning the round. I can go ahead and give some feedback and some comments that I noticed. Starting with the first speaker so starting with this first speaker, comments from Mahesh, great content, loved how it was structured. The feedback was, I think that I had for you is more so on the delivery end because I wish there was a little more structure. But there was really good cross, and I think that was really well handled. So, um, the next speaker, Bogdan, like good job with the good start with the cross. My suggestion would be to start with like one angle or question stream and then just keep digging at that one question to try to find what else the opposing speaker could say to try to like narrow down on that topic. So maybe start with like their weakest point and just be like, this is something that they were not able to clearly answer during your speech. So make it make it like a cohesive question, period. Alex, I think your speeches were really strong. I feel like some of the points didn't really have the same impact during cross. So, like your speech was strong, but like with cross, your opponent was able to answer a lot of the questions very successfully, and that's what made them a really strong speaker as well. So, I think something that could use some improvement is cross, like really get good at asking specific questions and try to attack like again like weakest points of their case rather than asking like overarching questions that might not help you with your speech specifically and set that up for success. Danae's like really strong speaker. I loved cross-examination. I loved your organization. I think something I would suggest is for like towards like the end of your speech, maybe um giving like the judge some type of like kind of like an outline of like what to expect next. Like I've outlined these things in my speech. Like here are two other things that will be coming up in the next speech or something along those lines. So I can make sure that I don't like I can like flow the arguments correctly and that is just like organized. So that's my little feedback for you. The third speaker for AF, I believe that was I don't know who that was. Maruna, I think. Yeah, for my notes, I have Maruna. You had 28 seconds left in your speech. So really try to maximize like all the time that you have, make the most out of that because I think that this was kind of like the turning point of like part of my turning point for the decision, because you had the opportunity to really take the 28 seconds to say whatever. Maybe this has to do with the pacing. I think a lot of people, a lot of debaters can get better at pacing throughout your speeches. That's my suggestion. David's really strong conclusion. I loved it. I don't have anything regarding your conclusion because yeah, I think it was really strong. Definitely helped you guys win with this round, and I thought that was a really strong speech. Um, Adit, I think making your speech more concise and easy to follow would be really helpful. Like, give me like very easy voters, like reasons why. Just be like, these are like reasons A, B, and C are why you should be voting for our team, and also like highlight what the opposing team is weak at, which you kind of did, but I think or restructuring your speech to make it more concise and more impactful will be helpful. And just I would suggest to practice pacing so it feels cleaner because from my perspective, it just felt very dragged out when there was content that maybe could have been rephrased or restructured so that it could have had a greater impact, if that makes any sense. And I think the AV team might actually benefit from changing up the speaker orders based on your different strengths because everyone, I mean, you guys are really good speakers. I think that everyone has different skill sets. So maybe like this could be just advice to the judge or not judges, the coaches to be to switch up the speaker orders based on the different skill sets that the students bring to the table and then see where that goes because I this was a really close round for me. There were really only like one or two speeches that I was like that were like the turning points for me. So those are the reasons why I voted neg, and that's also inclusive of the comments that I made for each speaker. Am I missing anyone's speech, like feedback, or does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. Well, if you have any questions in the future, you're welcome to email me, and I'm happy to help out. Thanks for a good
Thank
round.
you. Thank you, Judge. The final virtual debate for the spUN tournament is scheduled to be streamed on NSS International Space Development Conference, the ISD, in Orlando, Florida, on Saturday, June 21st at 8:30 Pacific Daylight Time. This debate will be streamed out on NSS YouTube and Facebook. We hope you will join us there. You will see an announcement of the ISDC competing teams soon after the last debate round on Sunday, June 8th. Also, please mark your calendars for Saturday, July 12th, 2025, 8 a.m. CT for the for the spUN program award event, and we'll be using the same Zoom link as today. Great job, excellent job, everyone. Thank you for participating in the 2025 spUN tournament room. Judge, I'm gonna please ask you to remain in the breakout room after the debaters and coaches depart, please. And debaters, watch tab room at spundebates.tabroom.com to see when you will be debating next and the position you will represent if your team is still continuing in the debates. The spUN debate program would not be possible without the students, debaters, coaches, hosts, moderators, and judges. So goodbye and thank you, everyone.